Did you know that pain can subtly control your life without you even realizing it? And no, I'm not referring to the physical pain from a fall or injury. This is the invisible weight you carry every day, buried deep in your mind, silently infiltrating your emotions and decisions. Emotional pain, often overlooked, becomes a force that dictates your choices and shapes your feelings. Have you ever wondered how fear, anxiety, or even the monotony of routine can transform into forms of suffering that you accept as an inherent part of yourself? Stoic philosophy teaches us that while pain is unavoidable, how we respond to it is entirely within our power. Are you ready to break free from the grip of hidden suffering and take charge of your life? If your answer is yes, join me as we explore 11 ways in which pain can influence you without your awareness. Don't miss the last one, it just might shift your perspective entirely. At the Wisdom of the Ages, we believe in the transformative power of stories and reflections, helping you turn challenges into meaningful growth. If this resonates with you, keep reading, and consider subscribing to our journey. But first, let me share a poignant story that perfectly illustrates the wisdom we'll uncover. In a quiet mountain village lived a man named Santiago, renowned for his skill in crafting kites. His creations, vibrant and full of life, seemed to touch the heavens when they soared. Every string was carefully woven, and each design reflected his patience and dedication. But over time, something changed. People noticed that Santiago's kites no longer flew with the same grace, they lacked their former vibrancy, the strings tangled easily, and even the gentlest breeze caused them to crash. When questioned, Santiago would reply with a faint smile, "The wind isn't the same anymore." One day, a little girl named Clara visited Santiago's workshop with a broken kite, asking him to fix it. As he worked, Clara noticed his hands trembling slightly. "What's wrong, Santiago?" she asked innocently. He avoided her gaze, shaking his head, and continued working in silence. That night, as he stared at the kite he had just finished, Santiago recalled a deeply buried pain. Years ago, during a fierce storm, he had lost his brother while trying to retrieve a kite blown away by the wind. Ever since, a shadow had lingered over his life. He convinced others, and himself, that the problem was the wind, but deep down, he knew the truth was different. Clara's innocent courage to voice what others wouldn't made Santiago reflect. Inspired, he decided to confront his fears. One morning, he took his kites to an open field. Closing his eyes, he let the wind brush his face and, for the first time in years, allowed it to guide his hands. Santiago realized that while he couldn't control everything, he could create something beautiful regardless. His kites once again soared high, filling the sky with vibrant colors. By acknowledging the pain he had suppressed and working with it instead of resisting, Santiago found liberation. The moral of this story is that, like a kite string, pain can be invisible yet incredibly strong. It silently controls us until we choose to stop, face it, and learn to integrate it into our lives. Only then can we regain our freedom and soar once again. Now, let's explore the key steps to recognizing and overcoming the pain that might be holding you back. If you find value in these reflections, consider subscribing to our channel and activating notifications to stay updated on our latest content. Let's begin. 1. Silent pain. It's intriguing how pain, our invisible companion that we all try to avoid, infiltrates our lives without asking for permission. This isn't just the physical pain of a fall or an injury, but the emotional pain that silently seeps into our minds and bodies. The unsettling part is that we often don't realize how much control it has over us. This silent pain doesn't announce itself with loud noises, it takes root quietly, influencing our emotions, thoughts, and how we approach life. This type of pain behaves like a cunning thief, entering unnoticed, sometimes disguised as anxiety, sadness, or even anger. You may feel trapped or overwhelmed but struggle to identify the source. Have you ever felt a tightness in your chest without knowing why? Chances are, you're carrying an emotional weight you haven't acknowledged. Silent pain is persistent, shaping the way you think and act without you even being aware of its influence. One clear example of this is the difficulty of letting go of the past. You might tell yourself that you've moved on, that everything is fine, but deep down, the wounds remain unhealed. The mind, true to its nature, doesn't easily forget, and those painful memories linger like shadows, following you wherever you go. Another reflection of this silent pain is the physical discomfort we often dismiss: muscle tension, recurring headaches, or persistent back pain. These aren't always just signs of stress or fatigue, they can be manifestations of unresolved emotional distress. Yet we push forward, ignoring the signals, as if our bodies don't have the right to express discomfort. But the body always speaks, and if you don't listen, it will eventually scream for attention. Silent pain can remain hidden for a long time until it becomes impossible to ignore. So, how can we free ourselves from this pain? Stoic philosophy provides a valuable perspective. It teaches us to accept what we cannot control and to prevent pain from dominating our lives. The Stoics understood that pain, whether physical or emotional, is an inevitable part of life, but it should never dictate our decisions. The first step is awareness. Don't hide from your pain or pretend it doesn't exist. If it hurts, it's okay to admit it. Acknowledging pain reduces its power over you. Then, think about what you can do to face it. This isn't about running away but about accepting it and finding constructive ways to ease it. Activities like meditation, exercise, talking to a trusted friend, or even laughing can help release the pressure you've been holding inside. By embracing these practices, you can gradually regain control over your life and start living with greater clarity and peace. Remember, pain does not define who you are, but the way you confront it does. If you allow pain to take control, it becomes a constant presence, limiting your life. However, by facing it with determination and wisdom, you can regain control and grow stronger. The next time you feel that shadow creeping closer, don't give in. Face it with the strength of your mind and the clarity that Stoic philosophy provides. As Epictetus wisely said, pain has only the power you give it. Accept pain as a part of life, but never as its master. 2. The trap of routine. Pain infiltrates your life so subtly that you often don't even notice. It's not the sharp pain of an injury or the physical agony that makes you cry out. It's a quieter kind of pain, one that settles in like a shadow, so gradually that you become accustomed to it without questioning why you continue to endure it. And that's the real issue: we get used to it. In its most insidious form, pain hides within routine, and before you realize it, it dominates your life. In the day-to-day, this pain can take many shapes: the exhaustion you carry at the end of the day, the constant feeling of not having enough time, or the dissatisfaction of being stuck in a job that doesn't inspire you. It's not always physical. More often than not, emotional pain creeps in quietly, manifesting as stress or discontent, which you gradually accept as natural and unavoidable. The real danger lies in how we normalize this discomfort. It stops being an exception and becomes a habit. It's like a constant background noise. You wake up, step into your routine, and it builds up silently. You might not even notice, but it's there, in every small sacrifice made to meet others' expectations, in every minute spent on something that doesn't ignite your passion. Worse still, like the coffee you drink each morning, you start to believe you need that pain to function. Discomfort becomes a habit, a normalized part of your life. But the Stoics warned against letting external circumstances dictate your inner peace. They acknowledged that while pain is inevitable, how you respond to it is what shapes your experience of life. If you settle for routine and let pain become your comfort zone, you are essentially imprisoning yourself in your own discomfort. The Stoics offered a radical solution: reflect, question, and shift your perspective. Allowing pain to remain an unchanging constant in your life is resigning yourself to a diminished version of who you could be. By embracing self-awareness and challenging the routines that no longer serve you, you open the door to a more fulfilling life. Pain doesn't have to be the foundation of your existence. Instead, it can be the spark that drives you to create meaningful change. So, how can you avoid falling into this trap? First, acknowledge the pain. Observe it, accept it, and admit that it's there. Don't ignore it or pretend everything is fine. Recognizing its presence is the first step toward liberation. Second, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, do you really need this pain in your life? Why have you accepted it as part of your routine? Examine your daily decisions and determine if they are leading you to well-being or if you're simply repeating patterns out of comfort. Finally, take action. Change what needs to be changed, even if it feels uncomfortable. Remember, what defines your life isn't what happens to you, but how you choose to respond. If you do nothing, the pain will remain, hidden in the shadows, and the most dangerous part is that you may not even notice it. This type of pain, though mild and seemingly harmless, can become a dangerous routine that limits you and deprives you of fully enjoying life. But you have the power to break this cycle, to question what you've accepted as normal. Like a muscle that needs exercise to grow stronger, your mind also requires training to free itself from pain's grip. It's about taking control, living with greater awareness, and reclaiming your freedom. As they say, pain is inevitable, but allowing it to control your life is a choice. 3. Pain and fear. Have you ever felt like you're chained to an invisible wall, unable to move even a finger? It's strange how something as intangible as fear can completely dominate you, isn't it? Fear of future pain becomes a vicious cycle that, without you realizing it, keeps you stuck in the same position, waiting, doubting, and, above all, avoiding decisions that could set you free. The most troubling part is that you often aren't even aware of how fear of pain controls you. Let's consider an example. You're on the brink of a significant step in your life. It could be changing jobs, starting a personal project, or having a tough conversation you've been putting off. Suddenly, fear clouds your mind. You imagine the worst, things won't go as planned, you'll fail, and you'll face the pain of disappointment. Your mind fills with catastrophic thoughts as though the entire world might collapse and you wouldn't be able to withstand it. Here's the trap: fear of future pain, what might happen, creates an imaginary barrier that paralyzes you. This anticipated pain hasn't even arrived, yet its mere possibility casts a shadow that stops you from moving forward. Who hasn't felt the anxiety of avoiding an important decision simply because the fear of the unknown was too overwhelming? So how does this fear disguise itself and become a silent dictator? First, fear often hides behind procrastination. The tendency to delay what you know you need to do is nothing more than a way to avoid facing what you fear, whether it's failure, rejection, or discomfort. Deep down, you hope that by postponing, the fear will disappear on its own, but it rarely does. Second, fear manifests as constant self-criticism. Thoughts like, what if I'm not good enough, or what if I don't have what it takes, become a burden that immobilizes you before you even try. This emotional pain feeds on the expectation of failure, keeping you from moving forward. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to breaking free. By confronting the fear, you regain the power to shape your own path. Instead of letting it rule you, use it as a signal for growth, a reminder that courage lies in action, not in waiting for fear to fade. If you find yourself trapped in this vicious cycle, it's time to seek a way out. This is where Stoic philosophy provides a valuable lesson. The Stoics taught that we shouldn't worry about what lies beyond our control. Yes, the future is uncertain, but obsessing over the unknown will only keep you stuck. True freedom lies in accepting that if pain comes, it will be part of the journey, not something to be feared. The Stoics advised focusing on what you can control: your thoughts, decisions, and actions. By choosing courage over fear, you take a significant step toward breaking free from the invisible prison that fear of pain has built around you. Ultimately, pain may be inevitable, but how you respond to it is what truly matters. The fear of future pain keeps you imprisoned, locked in a cycle that prevents progress. But remember, the only thing you truly control is how you choose to act in the face of that fear. Don't let it paralyze you. Take that step forward with bravery, and you'll often find that the suffering you feared is merely a shadow that fades when confronted. Engrave this in your mind: what you fear most is often a phantom created by your own imagination. The courage to face it is what will set you free. 4. Pain and the trap of expectations. Emotional pain is like an invisible teacher quietly influencing your actions without your awareness. Have you ever paused to consider how many decisions you make daily, driven by unprocessed emotions? This isn't about obvious moments, like crying during a sad movie or feeling anger when someone cuts you off in traffic. It's about those subtler emotions that creep into your everyday reactions and decisions, like an uninvited guest settling in your living room without permission. Suddenly, you find yourself overreacting to minor situations, feeling as though the world is against you, without fully understanding why. These unprocessed emotions become a silent force, a form of emotional pain that starts to shape your life without your notice. Does this sound familiar? When emotional pain is left unchecked, it turns into a constant shadow, trailing behind you at every step. You don't see it, but it's there, affecting how you view the world, interact with others, and make decisions. For instance, after a breakup, you might carry a persistent anger without knowing its origin. This emotional pain not only lingers as a memory of the past but also seeps into every new interaction, affecting even the simplest moments in your present life. You might overreact to insignificant comments or isolate yourself, fearing another encounter with that pain. The issue is that emotional pain doesn't stay in the past, it lives in the present, shaping your life in ways you might not realize. This is where Stoic philosophy offers a powerful tool. The Stoics teach us that unprocessed emotions are dangerous because they tether us to the past and prevent us from fully living in the present. They encourage us to observe our emotions, understand them, but never let them drag us down. By practicing this awareness, you can begin to untangle the hold of emotional pain and live a life less burdened by the shadows of the past. Recognize your feelings, allow yourself to process them, and gradually reclaim control over your actions and reactions. How can you achieve this? First, give your emotions space. Allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Don't run away or suppress them. If you feel sadness, anger, or fear, pause and observe them. You're not irrational for experiencing these emotions, it's simply your mind signaling that something needs attention. Accepting these emotions is the first step to freeing yourself from their control. Second, don't identify with your emotions. You are not your anger, sadness, or fear. You are the one experiencing them, not their captive. You are the observer who decides what to do with these emotions. Recognizing that they don't define you is crucial for reclaiming your power. Lastly, learn to let them go. You don't need to carry that pain like a heavy backpack all day. Once you've felt and understood what the emotion is trying to teach you, release it. It's like closing a book you've finished reading. There's no need to keep revisiting the same pages. Emotional pain, like a guest who overstays their welcome, doesn't have to be permanent. If you take the time to process, understand, and learn from it, you can let it leave when it has nothing more to teach you. The Stoics, with their wisdom, remind us that control over our emotions lies in our hands, not in the emotions themselves. Your emotions are not your masters, you hold the reins, provided you choose to take them. Remember, your emotions are signals, not sentences. You decide what to do with them and how to live your life. So, when pain attempts to invade your life, observe it, acknowledge it, and let it go. The control is yours to claim. As Marcus Aurelius said, pain only has power over you if you grant it permission. 5. The denial of pain. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I'm fine," when your mind is screaming otherwise? That little act of self-deception, pretending that everything is okay, is a strategy your mind uses to shield you from pain. But does it truly help? You might think ignoring what hurts is the solution, but in reality, all you're doing is storing that suffering until it inevitably bursts. The human mind has an astonishing ability to ignore what it doesn't like. It's like that box in your house where you stash everything you don't want to deal with, hoping that by closing the lid, the problem will vanish. But, just like that box, pain doesn't disappear magically, it merely hides, accumulating in the darkest corners of your mind, waiting for the perfect moment to resurface. The Stoics warned about the dangers of allowing emotions to overwhelm our reason. According to them, the key to avoiding the trap of denial is to face pain head-on, accept it, and process it. Of course, this isn't easy. The mind prefers shortcuts, quick fixes, and excuses to avoid discomfort. But those shortcuts only lead to greater suffering in the long term, like building a house on weak foundations and expecting it never to collapse. In the end, the truth always emerges, and you realize that the pain has been steering your life all along. Recognizing and addressing it is the only way to regain control and build a stronger foundation for the future. The first step is accepting that pain is an inherent part of life. Ignoring it is like walking under a cloudy sky without an umbrella, hoping to stay dry. Eventually, you'll get wet. The solution isn't to hide from it but to learn how to live with pain, accept it, and most importantly, understand it. The Stoics taught us to see challenges as opportunities for growth. If you can face pain and learn from it, you'll discover it isn't the monster you imagined. It's just another aspect of life that, when managed properly, doesn't have to dominate you. Recognizing how pain influences your behavior is essential. Maybe it's the fear of losing control, the need to appear perfect, or the pressure to seem strong when you feel broken. Identifying these patterns is the first step toward reclaiming control. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. If you can accept difficulties as part of life and stop avoiding pain at all costs, you'll free yourself from the cycle of denial. The next time you feel hurt, instead of hiding it, take a moment to observe what's happening in your mind. Don't run from it, confront it with courage. You'll find not only that you can coexist with it, but that it can make you stronger. As Carl Jung said, the pain you don't face today will control you tomorrow. 6. Pain and identity. We've all experienced difficult times, moments when pain, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, becomes such a large part of our lives that it feels impossible to move past it. That type of pain may start small, a fleeting discomfort barely brushing against your life, but over time, it becomes a constant companion, a shadow following you everywhere. Have you ever stopped to wonder if you've become your pain? While it may sound harsh, it's possible that, without realizing it, you've let pain take over your identity. Pain has a peculiar way of weaving itself into who we are. Sometimes, we accept it so readily that we stop noticing how much space it occupies. What begins as a temporary discomfort can grow into such a significant part of our lives that we forget who we were before it arrived. We identify with it so deeply that we allow it to steer our decisions, actions, and even our perception of ourselves. The real danger arises when we let pain define us. After a bad experience, you might find yourself thinking, "This happened to me, I'm a victim of this." It's easy to fall into this trap because pain can become a habit, an internal narrative that dominates our thinking. It defines us, limits us, and convinces us that we are merely the scars of what we've endured, overshadowing everything else we are and everything we could become. Then, a fundamental question arises: do you really want your pain to define who you are? This is where Stoic philosophy provides invaluable insight. To the Stoics, suffering is neither something to accept passively nor something that should dominate our lives. Pain is merely a chapter in our story, a challenge that, when managed properly, need not control us. You are far more than the physical or emotional discomfort you've endured. If you allow your pain to dictate your life, you surrender control and, worse, let it rob you of your identity. The solution, while simple in concept, is far from easy. Stop clinging to the label of victim. You are not your pain. No matter how many times you revisit it, it does not define you. When you become too identified with your suffering, you lose sight of what you can achieve and who you can become. Pain is not the centerpiece of your existence. It's a moment, a signal that something requires your attention. But don't dwell on it. Don't let that suffering draw the boundaries of your potential or dictate your future. Remember, you are more than your experiences, and you have the strength to grow beyond them. To reflect, consider this thought: pain doesn't define you, but it offers an opportunity to rediscover yourself. 7. Pain as a refuge. Pain, that heavy and uncomfortable sensation we all try to avoid, often seems to take on a life of its own. What's curious is that instead of eliminating it, we sometimes embrace it, using it as a kind of shelter. But have you ever stopped to ask if the suffering you carry is controlling you, instead of the other way around? Pain can become the perfect excuse to avoid making hard decisions. It's like an old, worn blanket in the winter. It might not provide the comfort or warmth you need, but you keep wrapping yourself in it because it's familiar. Pain often becomes a barrier between you and the changes you truly need. Imagine facing an important decision, leaving an unfulfilling job, changing a stagnant routine, or having a difficult conversation. Your mind immediately starts playing out worst-case scenarios. What if I make a mistake? What if things get worse? What if it hurts even more? This cycle of doubt and fear is the trap of using pain as a refuge. The familiarity of discomfort can feel safer than the uncertainty of change. We convince ourselves that staying in the same place, even if it's painful, is less risky than stepping into the unknown. The problem lies in this false sense of security. By clinging to pain, you're not protecting yourself, you're limiting yourself. Pain becomes a self-imposed wall, confining you to a space that feels predictable but prevents growth and progress. It's important to recognize that this refuge of pain is not real safety, it's stagnation. The Stoics remind us that true courage lies in stepping out of the familiar, facing our fears, and taking action despite the discomfort. Instead of using pain as an excuse, let it be a motivator, a signal that change is necessary and possible. As you reflect on your relationship with pain, remember this: the longer you stay in your refuge, the harder it becomes to leave. But the moment you step out, you'll realize that the fear of change was far greater than the change itself. Pain is not your home, it's a reminder to keep moving forward. Without realizing it, suffering often becomes the perfect excuse not to act. We get caught in a cycle of fear and anxiety, where change seems more terrifying than the painful routine we already know. This mechanism is more common than we think. We call it fear of change or resistance to growth, but in reality, it's the power of pain that immobilizes us. It's like being in a toxic relationship. The suffering feels like a necessary evil to move forward, and even though we know it controls us, we struggle to find the courage to break free. This is where the Stoics offer an invaluable lesson. According to Stoic philosophy, suffering is not something we should avoid but something we should learn to manage. It's not about ignoring pain but using it as a tool for growth. The Stoics taught that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond to it. When something hurts, instead of getting trapped in complaint and paralysis, try to see it as an opportunity to learn. Every time you face difficulty or pain, you are making a choice about how to respond. You can let suffering control you or use it as a push to free yourself. It's not easy, but shifting your perspective to see pain as an opportunity for growth can provide the strength you need to step out of your comfort zone and regain control of your life. Pain is a teacher, albeit a relentless one. It reveals your fears, confronts your insecurities, and challenges you to act. The problem arises when you turn it into a refuge, a prison disguised as safety. The key is recognizing pain for what it is, a signal that something needs to change, not something to fear or avoid. Next time pain arises, ask yourself, am I using this suffering as an excuse to avoid change? If the answer is yes, it might be time to reassess and allow that pain to spark positive action rather than serve as the excuse that keeps you stagnant. As Seneca said, suffering only holds power over you when you refuse to use it to evolve. 8. Self-criticism. How many times have you told yourself things like, I'm a mess, I'll never succeed, or I should have done better? These phrases, while familiar, are far from your allies. In fact, they are half-truths you quietly repeat to yourself, unaware that they are tying your hands and feet, plunging you into unnecessary emotional suffering. Welcome to the world of self-criticism, that toxic voice that takes up residence in your mind and, strangely enough, becomes one you sometimes choose to listen to. Self-criticism can be as subtle as a shadow, yet as destructive as an elephant in a china shop. The way you speak to yourself, the expectations you place upon yourself, and the relentless judgment that never takes a day off create an emotional pain that slowly but surely becomes a burden. The worst part? You often don't realize that the real enemy isn't external, it's internal. The pain you feel doesn't come from the outside world, it originates within you. And without knowing it, you continue to feed it, allowing it to control you. Self-criticism thrives on comparison and unrealistic standards. It demands perfection in a world where imperfection is natural. Each time you criticize yourself for falling short, you're building walls of self-doubt, making it harder to see your true worth and potential. It's a vicious cycle where the harsher you are on yourself, the further you move from self-compassion and growth. The Stoics remind us that mastery over our thoughts is essential. You are not your inner critic, and you are not defined by your mistakes. Recognize that this inner voice, while persistent, doesn't have to dictate your life. Speak to yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a friend, and you'll find that the grip of self-criticism begins to loosen. Imagine walking through life carrying a backpack that grows heavier with each step. At first, it feels like a minor inconvenience, but over time, you realize it's filled with stones, your judgments, past mistakes, and unmet expectations. 8. Self-criticism. Each time you make a mistake, it's like adding another stone to that backpack. And then you wonder, why do I feel so drained? The world isn't weighing you down, it's the emotional burden you impose on yourself through constant self-criticism. The worst part? If you keep feeding this cycle, you'll eventually reach a point where moving forward feels almost impossible. So, how do you break free from this pattern? The answer is simple, yet profound: stop carrying everything. The Stoics, with their timeless wisdom, urge us to observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming entangled in them. Not everything you think or tell yourself is true or helpful. Self-criticism isn't a compass to guide you, it's an anchor that drags you down. How can you free yourself from it? Recognize that you are not your thoughts or mistakes. That inner voice whispering, "I'm not good enough," doesn't have to be in charge. If you make peace with your mistakes, you'll see them not as enemies but as lessons in disguise. Failures aren't defeats, they're necessary steps on the path forward. Think of a child learning to walk. They stumble repeatedly, but no one scolds them for falling. Instead, they're encouraged to try again. Why not extend the same kindness to yourself? Question your inner dialogue. When self-critical thoughts arise, pause and ask, is this really true? Would you say the same thing to your closest friend? Likely not. So why speak to yourself that way? Acknowledging your flaws doesn't mean letting them define you. You are so much more than your mistakes. Practice self-compassion. Being kind to yourself isn't a sign of weakness, it's a powerful tool for mental resilience. If you treated a friend as harshly as you sometimes treat yourself, you'd likely lose that friendship. So why not befriend yourself instead? Self-compassion doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to face life's challenges. Self-criticism is often a silent pain we inflict on ourselves, but it doesn't have to rule your life. As the Stoics teach, you always have the power to change your relationship with suffering by choosing how to respond to what happens. The next time you find yourself berating yourself for something that didn't go as planned, take a deep breath, release that emotional backpack, and remember, mistakes don't define who you are, they are simply part of the journey. As Abraham Maslow aptly said, the pain you inflict on yourself is the hardest to let go of, but it vanishes quickly once you stop giving it power. 9. The body doesn't lie. Have you ever felt so stressed that your back aches or so anxious that your stomach turns? No, you're not imagining things. This isn't just in your head, it's your body's way of speaking to you, loud and clear. The link between physical pain and emotional distress is one of nature's most intricate and unavoidable connections. And while you might try to dismiss or ignore it, your body doesn't lie. Imagine that every time something emotionally burdens you, another invisible stone is added to your backpack. At first, the weight seems manageable, barely noticeable. But over time, that load begins to take a toll, manifesting as physical discomfort, tension in your shoulders, headaches that won't quit, or a knot in your stomach you just can't shake. The hidden impact of emotional pain. Physical pain often intensifies when its true cause, your emotions, goes unaddressed. The Stoics, masters of enduring suffering with grace, emphasize the importance of accepting what we cannot control. Yet in our modern lives, those emotional stones accumulate, and the body becomes a mirror of the mind's struggles. This leads to aches, migraines, chronic fatigue, and even digestive issues, as your body desperately tries to communicate what you're not addressing internally. The problem arises when we treat these symptoms superficially, masking the discomfort without acknowledging its root cause. Whether it's reaching for painkillers, over-exercising, or using temporary distractions, these quick fixes only quiet the body temporarily. But like a child tugging at your sleeve, your body won't stop calling for attention until the real issue is resolved. Pain as a messenger. Physical pain is not just an isolated discomfort, it's a messenger. That persistent headache might be the result of mental overload. The tightness in your shoulders could reflect the weight of daily worries. And that clenched jaw? Likely a sign of unspoken anxiety or suppressed tension. So, how do you break this cycle? Acknowledge the mind-body connection. The next time you feel physical discomfort, don't just focus on treating the symptom. Instead, ask yourself, what's happening inside me? Reflect on your emotions and recent experiences. Sometimes, the answer lies not in the body but in unresolved feelings. Adopt mindful practices. Activities like meditation, gentle exercise, or even journaling can help release the emotional burdens weighing down your body. Talking openly with a trusted friend or therapist can also alleviate some of the strain that's manifesting physically. Embrace the Stoic approach. Stoicism teaches us to approach pain with calm and understanding, accepting that while we may not control every aspect of our lives, we can control our reactions. This mindset can be liberating, allowing you to address the source of your pain rather than being consumed by it. Your body reflects your mind. Your body is a reflection of your inner state. When something feels off internally, it will inevitably show up physically. Instead of dismissing your body's signals, view them as an invitation to dig deeper. Ask yourself, is this just a physical issue, or is there something deeper that needs my attention? Healing requires more than treating symptoms, it's about uncovering and addressing the root cause. Remember, your body reflects your mind. If you neglect one, the other will demand attention. The next time your body sends you a message, listen to it. You might find that the key to physical relief lies within your emotional well-being. 10. The pain of not living in the now. Have you ever stopped to consider how much of your time is consumed by worrying about the future? Not the practical kind of planning, like preparing for a trip or deciding what to eat tonight, but the persistent anxiety that settles deep in your chest, gnawing at your peace. It's the unease that arises when you imagine what could happen in a month, a year, or even a decade. This is the anxiety of the future, an invisible enemy that quietly takes control of your thoughts, your decisions, and most tragically, your sense of calm. The trouble with this anxiety is its stealth. It sneaks into your mind, convincing you that you can control what hasn't yet happened. But the truth is, you can't even predict what will happen an hour from now. You're so caught up in what might come to pass that you lose sight of what's unfolding in front of you. It's like a car speeding endlessly without brakes, ignoring the beauty of the road already traveled. The trap of future anxiety. When you allow anxiety about the future to dominate, you end up racing toward a destination you're not even sure will resemble your expectations. This type of worry casts a shadow over your life, clouding your ability to make clear decisions. The most dangerous aspect of this constant apprehension is how it paralyzes you, fearing the imagined outcomes of your choices more than the actual inaction. The irony is that this pain of anticipating the worst is often built on baseless assumptions. Have you ever played out a catastrophic scenario in your mind over something as minor as an important conversation? That's the pain of anticipation, an illusion crafted by your mind, paralyzing you and consuming your energy. You become so busy imagining the negatives that you lose sight of the one thing that truly exists, the present moment. This fixation on the future transforms it into a looming monster, controlling your actions and robbing you of the present. The Stoics, with their timeless wisdom, emphasize that the key to a fulfilled life lies in living fully in the now. What you hold in your hands is only the present, not tomorrow, not 10 years from now, but this very moment. The freedom of living in the present. Practicing this mindset can be incredibly freeing. Instead of expending energy battling hypothetical futures, redirect it toward what you can control here and now. Make that phone call you've been avoiding, finally read that book you've set aside, or simply spend quality time with someone without worrying about what comes next. Anxiety changes nothing, it only steals the richness of your present moment. It's essential to remember, the pain of anticipation isn't real. You're not living the disaster you fear, you're merely constructing a fictional future in your mind. Is that mental horror movie truly worth it? Of course, planning is necessary, but obsessing over what hasn't happened only drains you. Shift your perspective. Instead of imagining worst-case scenarios, shift your focus to what is within your grasp right now. The present is where your life happens, it's the only reality. As Marcus Aurelius wisely put it, confine yourself to the present. The next time anxiety about the future creeps in, pause and ask yourself, what can I do now? You might just find that the moment you embrace the present, the shadow of the future begins to fade. 11. Freeing yourself from pain. Have you ever considered how deeply pain controls your life, often without you realizing it? It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of daily emotions and stresses, But pain has a way of quietly sneaking into your mind, shackling your freedom with invisible chains. Pain doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers, hides, adapts, or disguises itself. It might show up as a constant undercurrent of anxiety, a vague sense that something isn't right, or perhaps as resentment that grows from small irritations until you can't tell if you're angry at the world or at yourself. The real danger of pain lies in its ability to infiltrate when you're too busy to notice or too overwhelmed to reflect. Instead of responding with intention, you react instinctively, often feeding the very cycle you long to escape. How to break free from pain. The Stoic philosophy offers a roadmap to liberation. Its timeless teachings remind us to observe our emotions and reclaim control over our lives. No one else can do this for you. It's a deeply personal journey that starts with introspection and awareness. The Stoics teach us that emotions, however intense, need not dictate our lives. They believed that it's not the external circumstances that harm us, but our interpretation of them. Pain, at its core, is just an interpretation. If you allow this interpretation to dominate your mind, you surrender your power to something that, in many cases, exists only within your thoughts. The first step to breaking free is to become aware of how pain is manipulating you. Ask yourself, what type of pain am I experiencing? This isn't just about physical discomfort, it's about the emotional pain that masks itself as stress, frustration, or even boredom. If you can't name it, how can you confront it? Recognize and reclaim. Take a moment to reflect, what's truly bothering me? Is it a toxic relationship? A sense of helplessness at work? Guilt over something you can't change? The simple act of naming your pain shifts the power back into your hands. When you identify what's holding you back, you begin to loosen the grip it has on your life. The Stoics believed that freedom comes from within. By observing your emotions without judgment, by seeing them for what they are, temporary, often exaggerated responses, you can stop reacting impulsively. You regain the ability to choose how you respond, breaking free from the cycle of suffering. Take back your power. Liberating yourself from pain requires effort, reflection, and courage. It starts with acknowledging its presence and ends with redefining your relationship with it. Pain, when approached wisely, becomes less of an adversary and more of a teacher. As Marcus Aurelius once said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Take the reins. Name your pain, face it, and set yourself free. The power to live without its chains has always been yours. Change your perspective. If pain is inevitable, why not see it as an opportunity for growth? Instead of viewing it as something that weakens you, start seeing it as a tool to build your resilience. Just as iron is forged in fire, you too can shape your character through pain. Don't run from it, embrace it. Take time to understand what it's teaching you. Pain has a way of trapping you in endless loops of what-if thoughts, but the moment you act, you break that chain. Take one step, even a small one. It doesn't have to be perfect. Moving forward gives you a sense of control, and control is the key to freedom. The Stoics taught that not everything is within our power. If something lies outside your control, why waste energy on it? Learn to let go of what you cannot change and focus on what you can do today to improve your situation. Pain, in all its forms, may never fully disappear, but you can redefine your relationship with it. Stop being its victim and start mastering it. Remember, it's not your circumstances that define you, but how you respond to them. You hold the power to take control of your life and free yourself from pain. All it takes is a bit of awareness and action. As Lao Tzu wisely said, pain is not an enemy, it is a teacher in disguise. Join the conversation. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, pain teaches us to grow. At the Wisdom of the Ages, our mission is to provide valuable content that inspires and motivates you to transform challenges into opportunities. Don't forget to subscribe, activate notifications, and leave a comment so YouTube can recommend this video to others like you. Your engagement encourages us to keep creating meaningful content. Thank you sincerely for your time and support. See you on our next adventure.